FanDuel's dropping profit boosts every college football Saturday to turn wins into bigger wins. So how do we...
The most respected rabbis in Europe are seated in their ornate chairs. Men who controlled not only the souls, but the purses and political decisions of thousands of prosperous Jews. Rabbi Mortera, the leader of the congregation, a man whose words could ruin entire families with a single statement, leans forward. Baruch, he says, in a voice that mixes authority and warning, we hope you have come here to recant the dangerous ideas you have been spreading through our community. Spinoza looks around the room. He sees faces he's known since childhood. Men who taught him to read Hebrew. Men who blessed him at his bar mitzvah. Men who expected him to become one of them. And then, with a calmness that leaves everyone disconcerted, he opens the manuscript he brought with him. Respected rabbis, he begins, and his voice is firm as a rock. I have not come here to recant. I have come here to prove something you already know, but are afraid to admit. Now the silence in the room becomes almost solid. You do not worship God. You worship a man-made idol created by men who want to control other men. At the explosion of outrage that follows can be heard 3 blocks away. Shouts in Hebrew, fists pounding the table. Some men rise as if to attack him physically, but Spinoza remains motionless in the center of the storm. And when the chaos finally subsides, he continues with a serenity that is chilling. This idol you call God has very convenient characteristics for you, doesn't it? Because Spinoza hadn't just attacked a belief, he had attacked the entire system, all the power, the structure that kept those men in power. And not just them, the entire global religious hierarchy. You see, what Spinoza discovered wasn't merely philosophical. It was a perfect social engineering scheme that had been working for millennia. Think like an architect of control. How do you dominate millions without armies? How do you make them work for you voluntarily? How do you make them defend your system even when that system harms them? Simple. You create an invisible God with very specific characteristics. A God who is always watching but can never be observed. A God who constantly judges, but whose criteria for judgment can only be interpreted by you. A God who loves conditionally. He only loves those who obey the rules that you establish. A God who punishes severely. And coincidentally, you are the one who applies the punishments in his name. A God who rewards generously. And coincidentally, you control how those rewards are distributed. Do you see the pattern? It's like a card game where one person makes the rules, deals the cards, counts the points, and decides who wins. Spinoza looked at this system and had a revelation that sent religious leaders into absolute panic. He realized that the God described in the sacred texts had more in common with a human dictator than with an infinite cosmic force. This God had an ego. He got jealous and he changed his mind. He made political deals. He chose favorite peoples based on tribal criteria. He demanded financial tributes. In other words, he behaved exactly like an earthly king who wanted to be worshipped, and the representatives of this God on earth. Coincidentally, they lived like kings, golden palaces, luxurious clothes, absolute power over the life and death of their subjects. But here's the most brilliant part of the system. It's self-perpetuating. The more people suffer, the more they need spiritual consolation. The more spiritual consolation they seek, the more dependent they become on the providers of that consolation. The more dependent they become, the more power they give to the providers. The more power the providers have, the more they can create situations that make people suffer, and the cycle repeats. Generation after generation, century after century. It's the perfect business. You create the problem and sell the solution. You inflict the wound and sell the remedy. You generate fear and sell protection. Do you see the pattern? Spinoza did, and he understood that he was looking at the oldest and most efficient system of social control ever invented. Create an invisible God. Say that only you can speak to him. Say he demands obedience. Punish those who disobey.
If only we had more time to innovate and move the business forward. We need help.
How to stop estrogen spikes in men over 40.
No.
Look like this at 55?
Thanks,
Reward those who obey. Keep the people dependent on you for access to the divine. There you have it. You have absolute power over entire crowds. But Spinoza went further. Much further. He didn't just expose the problem. He offered the most revolutionary solution ever conceived. For months after that
Logical
confrontation in the
creation.
synagogue, he locked himself in his room. He ate little. He slept even less. He spent his nights studying not only religious texts, but mathematics, physics, astronomy. He was searching for God, the true God, not the political character invented by men, but the real force behind existence. And one winter morning, while watching snowflakes fall through the window, he had the revelation that would change everything. Each snowflake followed perfect physical laws. Each ice crystal formed according to precise mathematical patterns. There was no whim, no temperamental mood, no favoritism, only laws. Laws that worked with absolute consistency. The same laws that made the planets revolve, the same laws that made his heart beat, the same laws that made light travel and music sound, and he realized that was God. Not an anthropomorphic character sitting on a cloud, but the very logical structure of reality. The force that made the universe exist from nothing. The intelligence that organized atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into conscious organisms capable of contemplating their own existence. This force didn't have an ego because it was too infinite to need validation. It didn't get angry because it was too perfect to feel threatened. It didn't make political deals because it was too universal to have favorites. It didn't demand worship because it was too complete to need anything external. If you want to know God truly, he said to the rabbis in that stuffy room, his words cutting through the air like a blade, stop looking in books written by men. Look at nature. Look at reality.
That's why I'm
Use
in
the
the deep
reason
green.
God gave you. And then he said something that made their
Surrounded by
blood run
nature.
cold. Because the true God is not
People go,
hidden
how
behind
can you live there?
complicated
It's so
rituals and
inconvenient, so
mysterious
uncomfortable.
interpretations
You're like
that only
camping.
you can make. He is
Well,
right in front of you,
comfortable camping.
all the time, available to anyone who has the
Survivable
courage to
camping.
open their eyes. Because the true God, according to Spinoza, wasn't hidden
Loves
behind complicated
co-creation.
rituals and mysterious interpretations. He was right in front of you. All the time, God, Spinoza said, is reality itself, its nature. It's the laws that govern the universe. It's the mathematical logic that makes the stars shine and the planets revolve. This God has no ego. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't throw tantrums. He doesn't need worship. He doesn't choose favorite peoples. He doesn't ask for money. This God simply is. And anyone, using their natural reason, can know him directly, without intermediaries, without interpretations, without anyone's permission. Can you imagine why this sent the religious leaders into a panic? If Spinoza was right, the entire structure of religious power would collapse overnight. There would be no more need for priests, rabbis, pastors, or imams. There would be no more need for religious institutions. There would be no more need for tithes, offerings, or donations. People could connect with the divine on their own. This was more dangerous than atheism. At least atheism left religion as an option. What Spinoza was proposing made organized religion completely obsolete. 3 weeks after that meeting, on a gray August morning, a man dressed in black knocked on the door of the Spinoza family home. Baruch opened the door and found a sealed envelope with the official seal of the congregation. His hands trembled slightly as he took it, not from fear, from anticipation, because he knew exactly what was inside. The cherem, the most severe decree of excommunication ever issued by the Amsterdam Jewish community. But when he opened the envelope and began to read, he realized it wasn't just an excommunication. It was an attempt at social assassination. The document didn't just banish him from the religious community. It ordered that Spinoza be treated as if he were dead. Let no one communicate with him either orally or in writing, the decree stated. Let no one do him any favor. Let no one stay with him under the same roof. Let no one approach him within less than 4 cubits. Let no one read anything composed or written by him. 4 cubits, about 6 feet, the exact distance one kept from a decomposing corpse. But there was more, much more. The decree continued with a curse that chilled even Spinoza to the bone. May he be cursed by day and cursed by night. Cursed when he lies down and cursed when he rises. Cursed when he goes out and cursed when he enters. It was as if they were trying to erase his existence, not just from the community, but from reality itself. That same afternoon, something extraordinary happened. His younger sister, Rebecca, came home weeping. Neighbors had shouted at her in the street, calling her the sister of the heretic. His mother, a deeply religious woman, looked at Spinoza with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Why did you do this to us?" His father, a respected merchant whose business depended entirely on the Jewish community, simply said, "You have until sunset to leave this house." At 23 years old, Spinoza lost not only his religion, he lost his family, his friends, his community, his social identity, and his livelihood. He became literally a ghost walking the streets of Amsterdam. People who had known him since childhood crossed the street when they saw him. Merchants refused to sell him food. Landlords refused to rent him rooms. The Jewish community of Amsterdam numbered around 4,000 people. It was practically a city within a city. And overnight, these 4,000 people were instructed to treat him as if he didn't exist. Any normal person would have caved.
And that is what is occurring, right? So how many of you know about Spinoza? It's very interesting, the little bit of communications we have. Hi, are you wearing pantyhose? How many times have you called a black person an N-word? Well, it's very interesting, that last sentence. To that concept, to say that word in anger or animosity or hatred, that is the essence of that word. But to say it, because I grew up in Harlem, I was surrounded by black folk. The woman who gave me life was black. I suckled on her breast with her baby daughter at my side. She was my sister. I grew up in that family as a black person. I am a African American who is melanin challenged. All of you are. We all came from Africa. Jesus was a black man. Think of that when you ask that stupid question. Lunch. What is love? Love is total agape sacrifice as a doula to love's co-creation, not some anthropomorphized, banking element called religion, which is hand in hand, goes along with the political structure of the kingdom. How did the Hebrews get the word or name Jew? Because when they came west, going through the Silk Road for 100 years, from Jerusalem into Western Europe, they basically picked up a lot of loose change in basically jewelry, gems and etc. And so when they went to the kings who were fighting, the French kings were fighting, the English kings who were fighting, the German kings who were fighting, the Spanish kings and all those wars, the 100-year wars, were basically costing money. And the only people making money were the bankers. And when the Hebrews showed up with jewelry, that was, liquid finance, King said, "Oh, you're a jeweler. Jew. And that's where they got that name. I spent a good 10 years in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with the Hasidim and Lubavitcher and other tribes of the Hebrew nation. And like any other group of people, there were good people, lazy people, smart people, and dishonest people. And it wasn't a racial thing, it was an individual thing, right? One thing that is true, and that is there are no races. There's only one race, and it's called the human race. What Spinoza was talking about, religion, is what people talk about politics. And all politics is the politics of the other. Who to blame, who to isolate, Who to shun. So I'm here to serve God's unconditional love. That's what I'm here for, right? And after I died in 2014 and came out of that alive, but still totally messed up physically, I had a clear mind. I knew what to do. And what did I do? I sold all of my wealth. I liquidated it, and I donated it to the poor. Not to institutions, not to the churches, not to things like Goodwill, but to the poor. When I found an individual who was working with the poor, I gave them money. I gave them property, right? And now I live on $400 a month, and that's fine. Because, I work for God. God always takes care of me. No real worries. Right now, I have all $3 in the bank until the end of next week, right? And that's fine. And I spent my last $15 to buy this lunch because it's good, right? And I didn't have to go into debt for it, Everyone who has credit cards, here late, what happened when you died? Do you remember? Of course I remember. I was working for the corporate elite as a negotiator and a, itinerant scholar. And after 15 years of that, I went from weighing about 240 to weighing 460. And I was, a Gorgo. And I was in a mobster, fancy Italian restaurant, and I was surrounded by lawyers and some mobsters, and we were all telling stories, and I was a better storyteller than any of them. And I was right in the middle of a story, and I just, I'm looking at everyone, and the vision went, boom, to black, face right into the big plate of linguine, lobster linguine. And so, and I wake up from that like 5 days later, and they're rolling me into an operating room, and and I had the needle in my arm, the fentanyl in my body. I should have been like this cold slab of meat, ready to be sliced up, but I just, because when I went into that bowl of linguine, I woke up in the basement cafeteria of Hitler's Rifle Squad, Holy Redeemer School. And a good deal of the nuns there were all basically Operation Paperclip folk who basically were, they came from Auschwitz where they were torturing people. Like the nun that beat me up when I was in first grade, she crushed my larynx, broke the little thing there, broke the orbit of this eye, broke my jaw, crushed my larynx, and my, she tried to kill me, right? And the Jesuits have been trying to do that for a long time, but they, I'm out in the woods, they don't care, right? Now, if people were to listen what I say and think about what I say, they might do something about what I say. But if they came to me, I'd say, hey, just hire me. You need me. I am not against this. Because if you really want to help humanity and you want to basically represent as a doula to love's co-creation, I don't like using that word because it references a patriarchal, humanized deity, and the deity's unknowable, everywhere, unknowable. So why are we told what he is in the Torah, right, and the Talmud and Kabbalah? If you get high enough on the food chain to read that book, and why is God vengeful God? He's all-knowing. He knows exactly what you were going to do before you were even born. So why should he be pissed off at you, right? If he's all-knowing and everywhere, and he loves co-creation. So if he loves co-creation, how can he be vengeful, spiteful, want punishment, need, being idolized, right? No, God doesn't need that. The true God that we don't know, the creator of all things, we know there's a God because here we are, right? That's the basic Schrodinger's cat premise, right? So, and if you are constantly conscious intent of being connected to love's co-creation, then you feel God in your heart all the time. So there is no fear. I don't worry about things. I mean, when the cockroaches first started coming in here in 20, they just were disgustingly, just didn't care. They destroyed a culture that was here. But they do that all the time. They did that to the indigenous people here and in Africa and in India and in Asia. It's standard operating procedure with the cockroaches. So when I was, when I woke up and I was in, the HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad's basement cafeteria, was all vomit pea green, right? And I don't know if you've ever been in public school or any school, and they have this like sawdust, green sawdust that they throw on vomit or diarrhea in the hallways or in the classroom, and they just throw it on there and they wait till that thing soaks, and the smell of it is like it's like pine saw, vomit, and diarrhea all together. And it's made of a plastic material that your body absorbs, right? You have so much of this PEPFAR in your body that it's like you are eating a credit card every week. I mean, physically eating that plastic credit card. That's how much plastic is in your body. That's why people are, don't have babies anymore, because they're infertile.
I'm gonna smoke my cigarette.
Smoke that.
Chicken.
Okay. So anyway, and everyone around me was like patting me on the back. Oh, you did such a great job. Oh, welcome home. And then I kind of looked over, and there was my master. And I said, "Oh," and he goes, "You're doing a good job." And I said, "I'm doing a good job." He said, "But that's like, I'm not done." Anyway, so basically, I said, "So what's the story?" He goes, "Well, you got a choice. You can stay here for eternity, or you can go back and finish up your job. You only got 11% to do." So I said, "What am I supposed to do?" He goes, "I don't know. You'll figure it out. I'm always there. Don't worry." So I did. That's when I woke up at Chatty Cathy. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. And why don't you hit that like button? Come on, you want to do it. Why don't you subscribe? Like all of you folk who have been writing these really sharp, really amazing text here. Why don't you join up? Join the cadre. Come on. So so be good. Catch you later. See you when I see you. Okay, I'm gonna come. Let's see what time it's like. Oh, what time is it now? Oh, about 4 o'clock. I should come back on. Okay. Let's talk to you later. Oh, boo boo. No, there it is.
Put a dry though. And the back door is open. Oh, I need to take